on to Valerie.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. As mentioned by Stephanie, I will present you some of the last, but probably not least, updates on textile face covering. Today I will present you an overview of the face covering status, and then I will focus on updated requirements in France with the French Cross Ministry's note and with the specification published by AFNOR regarding masks for sports. We will see different requirements in Europe and then go to the US to see what happened there. The presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. As the spread of COVID-19 continues, health experts agree that asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic can spread the disease. We know that governments have strongly suggested or have mandated wearing of face masks covering by general population, especially with variants emerging. World Health Organization has also updated its guidance, advising that to prevent COVID-19 transmission effectively, governments should encourage the general public to wear masks in specific situations and settings as part of a comprehensive approach to suppress virus transmission. We all know, but have to keep in mind that wearing a face covering protects people from the wearer. We also have to remember that reusable fabric masks are non-medical masks, which is neither a medical device nor personal protective equipment. We know also that filtration and breathability are determined by fabric layers and material types and are the key points to give mask efficiency and comfort. Disposable masks can also be considered as face covering, but will raise some environmental issues. At the beginning, do-it-yourself masks were promoted. The trend is now to use industrial masks, which are tested and can then guarantee to comply with filtration and breathability requirements, and then provide a better safe for the wearer and environment. Other regulations applicable to consumer goods and textile articles will also apply. Standards and guidelines may be government-sponsored standards or industry consensus guidelines. It generally focuses on construction and design, labeling and instruction, how to wear the mask and how to wash it. So wash conditions will also be provided. It's also focused on barrier performance, use of children, and so on. But we don't have to forget that REACH, POP, chemicals restriction, and other regulations are also applicable on this kind of product. For the EU market, as mentioned earlier, I will show what's new in France, what may come in Europe, and what are the specific requirements for some of the European countries, like Spain, Portugal, UK. The last update of the French Cross Ministry's note is based on the previous version, as most of previous requirements are still valid, like no sagittal seam, 4 hours wearing test, and so on. But this new version presents a stricter expectation for filtration, and only masks with more than 90% filtration efficiency now complies with sanitary authorities' recommendations. New logos have been developed and must be used to show mask compliance. You can see at the right of the slides, they have been developed to respect the 90% requirement. A French decree has also been published to reinforce this not new but only limit for filtration. Masks which don't comply with these notes must be sold apart from the complying mask, and consumer must be advised clearly that products don't comply with authority recommendations. Care cycle instructions have been licensed, and 40 degrees washing is now allowed, and on-hand washing also. Registration on DG website, which was specificity for French government, is not mandatory anymore, but the file will still exist to be used by French authorities, customs and market surveillance, to check the compliance of goods and on the French market. It is recommended, even not mandatory, to accept to share data in this file, as it will allow customs to check directly the compliance of imported goods without asking the documents to importer. It will be the same for market surveillance, and it could help the import of the goods on the French market. AFNOR has developed in a very short time a new document named Specification 70.001 to define requirements for masks to be used during sport activities. This document is mainly based on AFNOR Specification 76.001, which has not changed since April 2020, but with some new requirements related to sport activity. Masks must be reusable and be washable at least 10 times. A test regarding air harness resistance has been defined with a weight of 20 newtons. Filtration requirement is 90%, but breathability must be higher than required for other masks. Between 230 and 300 liters per square meter per second for moderate intensity activity, and more than 300 liters per square meter per second for high intensity activity. As sport activity will increase people's breathing, a very new requirement has been defined, CO2 content, and two methods are allowed to measure the quantity of CO2 inside masks. You can see the different methods suggested on the table in the slide. Performance test is also required, and 5 runners must wear masks during 10 minutes running and comment comfort. This test will have to be made before and after the care cycles on the mask. This slide regarding CWA 17553/2020 has been published in June, and CEN workshop agreement has been defined to comply with each one of the existing national requirements. Please find this slide as a reminder, and we will see later what should become this document in the coming months. Here you can see some of the regulations or guidelines existing in several countries in Europe. This list is not exhaustive, as things are still moving and requirements are adjusted with various evolution. Moreover, in some cases, like in Germany, requirements can be adjusted between government and Bundeslander's decision. So you have to follow carefully each country you would like to export your product to. I will present you some of them, and others will be available upon request. For Spain, there is a regulation which has been published in 2021, and the name is Order CSM 115/2021, and fixes the requirements for face covering. It is based on Spanish standards, UNE, and precise some marking as identification, composition, report reference, which are required on the labeling. It mentions also that tests must be performed in an accredited lab, and mentions EN 14682 to be followed for children. In Portugal, they have based their requirements on CWA 17553, but they have defined user type related to how masks will be worn. Mask level 1 are masks for health and sick professionals, when level 2 will be for professionals in frequent contact with the public. and the level 3 are for professionals who are not in telecommuting or general population for authorized exit in confinement context. Filtration can be evaluated by PFE, particles filtration efficiency, or BFE, bacterial filtration efficiency. Breathability can be measured by air permeability or differential pressure. The difference between the levels are mostly related to the filtration level efficiency. In UK and England, BRC is a guidance document which is more focused on textile features of masks, dealing with color fastness, repellency, and performance tests. When BSI document, named Flex 5555, is more similar with other national requirements, defining filtration efficiency and breathability requirements. This document is not a British standard, however, it's an acknowledged voluntary technical specification. It will be revised frequently to reflect the dynamic situation, taking into account comments from users, government guidance, and emerging knowledge. To follow the first published document, CEN has opened a group to work on a new document related to masks. The purpose is to switch from CWA to a TS, which is a technical specification and which will summarize some requirements and recommendations to guarantee the performance and the quality of the mask and how they can comply with requirements and efficiency. We could say that CWA is a kind of compilation of existing national requirements with quite a large scale of methods and requirements. When the TS should harmonize them and will recommend test methods and requirements more specifically. As CWA has been published in a really short time, the aim is now to optimize and define what are the relevant standards and requirements to determine face covering right expectations. One of the difficulties to manage regarding face covering masks is that they are not PPE, protection personal equipment, neither medical device, but they are more than a simple textile accessory, as they have a specific function within pandemic. We go now to the US market, and we can see that on the US market, two documents have been developed. The first one, ATCC M14 2020, is a kind of tool to help manufacturers to produce face covering when the ATM F3502 2021 is more regarding the definition of the minimum requirements, labeling, testing for face covering. These documents are what they are for, and they want to address or preempt existing requirements and regulation as mentioned in the list, like medical face mask, respiratory protective devices, antimicrobial materials, finishes or mechanisms, and other specific protection like high heat or electrical protection. We will go a bit deeper in the ISTM F3502 2021 regarding the standard specification for barrier face covering. This is a summary of the performance requirements you can have in this standard. Key points of these standard specifications are similar to what face covering are used to comply with particle filtration efficiency, breathability, care instruction, washing, and leakage and this kind of thing. But there are some specificities like flammability. It also mentioned the different particle size as the filtration must be performed with subparticles smaller than 1 micron. It is a main difference with what we are used to know in Europe, especially, as the subparticles smaller than 1 micron represent the ability to capture and reduce the respirable droplets and aerosols that potentially contain virus and bacteria. Of course, because of the difference of sizes, the results will be different when tested to methods of larger mean particle size in Europe, for example. As in Europe and in other parts of the world, there are 2 levels for filtration, level 1 and level 2, which are more than 20 or 50%, which are quite different of the 70 and 90% we are used to know in other parts of the world. The ASTM specification defines 4 classification levels depending on result of filtration and breathability. You can see that level 1 and level 2 are described in the slide, and you can have 2 results and 2 requirements for submicron particulate filtration efficiency and 2 requirements for airflow resistance. So the limits for the filtration efficiency will be 20 and 50% minimum, when the airflow resistance has to be lower than 15 millimeter or 5 millimeter water. A specificity also is that tests must be performed by an accredited lab, but the manufacturer can make the self-declaration conformity. You can see on this slide what are the requirements regarding the labeling in ASTM specification F3502, and there are 2 different kind of requirements. On products, some information must be put, like manufacturer info, style reference, and the mention meets ASTM F3502. And this marking is required to be accessible and permanent on the product. If there are some other requirements or the regulation applicable for labeling, they will have to be also on this permanent label, like children's label. On the packaging, there are more information required, like traceability, to all the information related to traceability, to be to enable the authorities to recall if there is a non-compliance product on the market. But you have also the information like size, warning statements, classification, and so on. It is done for this part of the technical presentation. And to conclude, we would like to confirm you that SGS is able to support you depending on your needs all over the world. SGS offers testing and consultation service for interested parties on fabric mask to help check if the product performance satisfies related regional specifications and requirements, and share information on export and import procedure. You can see on this slide all the features and all the test methods and requirements SGS can provide to you and support to export the mask all over the world and in countries with requirements related to mask and face covering. We can also provide some inspection, consultative service marking review. So I have done for this presentation, Stephanie. I don't know if we have some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie, for your presentation. So before moving to the Q&A session, I'd like to inform our attendees that I'll display a short poll at the end of the Q&A session to rate their overall satisfaction with today's webinar. So thanks in advance for your participation. So let's have a look indeed at the Q&A panel. The first question is, will a mask that complies with the CWA 17553 also comply with the French regulation?
It's a very good question, because indeed it is the contrary. What I mean is that the requirements regarding the French market are included in the CWA 17553, but the contrary is not right. I mean that in CWA you have several methods to test filtration efficiency and breathability, and within these methods, French requirements methods are included, so you can make the test according to CWA, but you have to precise that you need that the test has to be performed according to the French requirements. Because in CWA, some test methods are allowed, but they won't comply with the French requirements.
Okay, thank you. I think we received a similar question. The person is asking about labeling and packaging for EU market. So complying with the CWA 17553 requirements, does it mean that it will cover and meet the requirements of all EU countries? Definitely no.
So regarding the labeling, there are some, it's more, we could say, open. Some of the requirements which have to be mentioned, information which have to be mentioned on the mask packaging and labeling. Normally, CWA and AFNO specification provide a quite wide kind of information, and they should then comply with what the French Cross Ministries require, which is not so detailed. The only specification regarding the French requirement is that there is a logo, as you can see on the slide I have presented, and this logo will show the mask compliance for the French market. Regarding the CWA and the information to be mentioned, I am not sure that they will cover all the requirements for the EU countries, because I know that, for example, some countries require some information like report references or the lab name, and I don't think that the CWA went so deeply in details of this kind of information. It was more related to mask information, instruction, how to wear, how to remove the mask, how to wash it, how to wear it, and the duration of wearing, and so on. So there are some specificities in countries which are not covered by CWA.
Okay, thank you. New question for EU market. Is the CE marking required for any country?
The CE marking, there is no CE marking for face covering masks. CE marking is only required for PPE and medical device. and other products, but it's not the point here. But so the face covering mask, what we can say also the community mask, they don't require any CE, and they don't require, and you can't use CE marking on this kind of products because they don't follow any regulation like medical device or PPE regulation.
Okay, thank you. Does CWA and ASTM F3502 US a mandatory or recommended requirement? And if mandatory, when is the effectivity?
They are not mandatory. Most of the documents and requirements I have presented you, except some national requirements. The CWA and the ASTM, they are not exactly standards, and they are not mandatory. There are some kind of guidance and guidelines to help the manufacturer to produce masks with good performances regarding filtration, breathability, workmanship, and so on. They are not mandatory, CWA and ASTM, but they could be used by authorities to check that the mask will provide a good protection regarding the consumers. Except what I have presented you in France, where there is a regulation, in Spain, where there is also an order which mentions what are the requirements and what are the standards the product must comply with. CWA and ASTM are not strictly mandatory.
Okay. One question for the US market. What is the flow rate in ASTM F3502 in breathing resistance testing? Do you have the information?
Let me check here in the one for me. Regarding the US, I don't have the information. I have to check with my colleagues in the US to be able to answer you. So, as mentioned, we rely on the SGS network to get the information and to share the information, and I will check with them what are the requirements.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Can EN 13274 part 7 be used for AFNOR filtration efficiency testing?
Which question is it, Tiffany?
Can the standard EN 13274 part 7 be used for AFNOR? I guess for the filtration efficiency testing.
For the filtration efficiency testing in AFNOR, if we speak about AFNOR 76.001, only DGA method is mentioned in the standard. So the filtration has to be performed with the same method as it is mentioned in the French cross-minute results.
All right. Someone is asking whether there's a database where all the different European national regulations are listed. Is there a database?
There is no database, but as as mentioned, we can provide you some information, and we have also, of course, developed this table to have another view of the different markets requirements, and it is something we can provide you. You can contact your local SGS office, and they will be pleased to make the link with the global service to provide this kind of information.
Okay, thank you. Next question: is there any specific requirement for the uncovered elastics used as ear loops or headbands?
Regarding what we call the head harness, the requirements are quite open. There is most of the time a requirement regarding the fitting, the comfort. There are some tests regarding the strength, how the loops or the stripes will fit on the face, on the head of the wearer. As I mentioned, in the mask for sport, there is a requirement regarding the strength with a weight to apply on the mask to check that the loops and so on are strong enough. And apart from this, the requirements are quite open. The only specification we could say regarding ear loop and so on, it's regarding mask for children. As you know that there is a standard, especially in Europe, but also in the United States, regarding cords and drawstrings for children. And of course, masks have this kind of features. And the producer, the manufacturer for masks for children must take care that the loops or the stripes, the head harness, won't create a risk for children, like strangulation, entrapment, and so on. Of course, masks are not allowed for children younger than 2 or 3 years, depending on the place you are. But it is obvious that for so young children, a mask can be very harmful. So the requirements regarding head harness are mostly for children, to take care about what the risk can provoke the presence of head harness. So it has to be taken in care by the manufacturer.
Okay, thank you. Next question: is it correct to say that for EU countries that haven't defined yet a specific own standard, such France, Swiss, etc., we can rely on CWA 17553 in order to comply with export and import regulations?
Yes, the CWA has been developed exactly to be a solution for countries which didn't develop their own requirements. So if there is nothing mentioned specifically in some European countries, CWA should provide a minimum quality and performance level to guarantee that the masks are safe for the wearer.
Okay, thank you. Next question: you mentioned in France instructions that explain how to wear the mask correctly. Do you expect other EU countries to introduce such requirement?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
You mentioned that in France there are instructions that explain how to wear the mask correctly. So do you expect other EU countries to introduce this requirement? to have instructions?
Okay. This requirement is already in CWA and in some requirements, because it is a part of the labeling as instruction for use. Most of the time in AFNOR specification, CWA, there are some information in the document to explain and to provide some information to the manufacturer to be put on the document which are provided with the mask, how to wear, how to put, how to remove. So most of the time this information are already there, and especially in CWA there are some instruction regarding that. So it's advices and they are mentioned in document already.
Okay, thank you. To which EU countries apply the AFNOR spec 70.001 for sport masks?
For what I know, only France has developed this standard and follow it. I don't have information regarding other countries. I don't think that the document has been translated in English, and I'm not sure, but I don't think so. So it's right now it's really a French document. It has been developed to support sports industry and federations to be ready when the sport activities in closed room will be open again, especially in France, to be able to open sooner, they hope, and to provide some guarantee regarding the wearing mask, and this kind of mask will be safe regarding against the virus, but also safe for the wearer, as the requirements are higher, especially regarding breathability, but also regarding CO2 content, to avoid any damage for the wearer, because the sport, of course, will increase breathing, and the mask has to be adjusted regarding performances to be sure that CO2 the sportman will create will not put him in trouble when breathing.
Okay, for the next question, maybe we need to double check with our colleagues. Are there any requirements and any mandatory tests for the Australian and New Zealand market for fabric mask? We need to double check?
Yes. We have to check with our colleagues regarding this part of the world, yes.
Okay, a question about which market, according to you, has the strictest standards for masks? Is that US, EU, Spain? Can you assess that? Where are the strictest standards?
Yes, it's a good question. For what I know, we don't have enough data right now to compare and to be sure that one method is stricter than the other one. Especially for filtration, it is a very difficult expertise, and it's really aerosol science is quite complicated. And so, for what I know, we will check, but we can have some clue. But I don't think we have some exact information to say which requirement is the strictest one, especially because as I said, in the US, the requirements regarding filtration is 1 micron, when Europe is 3 microns. So it is also because the purpose is different. So difficult to compare.
Yeah, got it. Okay. A next question about sport masks. The manufacturer needs to do the wearing tests, or is that the laboratory who does the test? And if it is a manufacturer, how can the manufacturer evaluate the results?
So the test regarding the running test, the test can be made by the manufacturer, or they can also be made by the lab, if the lab is organized and equipped to make this kind of test. For example, in France, we are working, and we are trying to work with a sport institute, with a sport with runners and players, who can make these trials, but it can be made by the manufacturer himself. And in the specification, there are some requirements to evaluate the comfort and the performance of the mask when it is used for sport. For example, the evaluation, which is quite subjective, it is admitted, of course, will be on the general comfort of the mask. If there are some leakage at the nose or on the side of the mask, if the mask has to be can be kept all the tests long, and so on. And so there are different evaluations which have to be made by the 5 runners, and the mask will be okay if 80% of the answers and the mask are okay with the evaluation, and will be okay with the result of the evaluation.
All right. Someone is asking a very general question, so I guess it depends on which markets the company would like to place the products, but which are the mandatory national regulations and which are recommendations, right? So right now we can say it depends on where the product will be placed. Then we can investigate which are the national regulations or deviations.
Yes, right.
Okay. Another specific question, let me know if you have the information. CWA and AFNOR spec specify mask doesn't have valve, but the Belgium standards, yes. Is that correct? Do you know that?
I have to check for the Belgian standards. It is true that sometimes the requirements can be different. The issue with the valves is that you create a kind of door regarding the virus and the particles. So that's the reason the valves are most of the time prohibited. I will have to check if it is allowed in the Belgium standard.
Okay, and then maybe we'll take the final questions. Is there any EU country beside France that have specific requirements about the shape of the mask, such as sagittal seams are forbidden? I'm not sure I pronounce it well.
Sagittal seams, yes.
Yeah.
For what I know, so the shape of the mask is most of the time quite open, and there is no specification except, and that's right, regarding the sagittal SIM in the French Cross Ministry's notes, which is not allowed because they have considered that the SIM at the front of the mast will create a possibility of leakage, and the hole created by the SIM will have some difficulties. So, for what I know, the AFNOR, CWA, and other global requirements don't mention this kind of forbidden shape like a sagittal SIM. I think that only France has defined that specificity.
Okay, all right. Then one question for the Spanish market. What is important concerning the laboratories to comply with the Spanish order? Is that a broad question?
Regarding the lab accreditation, the lab accreditation has to be accredited according ISO 17025, and it is the requirement which is mentioned in the order.
Okay. Another question, are those standards or are those technical files, and what is the difference?
It is true that with the new documents regarding mask, we can say, discovered some cases in the national committee or European committee and so on. And as I mentioned, the CWA, which is a CEN working agreement, a workshop agreement, sorry, it's not a standard, it's not a technical specification, so it's really a kind of guideline, and it's true that it's not really mandatory or specification in Europe. What I mentioned is that because of that, CEN has launched a working group to, we could say, transform the CWA into a TS. TS is neither a standard, but it is a technical specification, and it could be used by authorities. It could be more useful for manufacturers to make the mask if they follow the TS. But it is true that most of the time, except when you have a regulated text, like in France, like in Spain, the document I have presented you are voluntary, recommendation, and they are not exactly standards and regulation.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. I think we still have a few questions that we did not answer, but I think we'll do that in the written Q&A report. So before we wrap up, as I mentioned before, I pushed on the screen the poll. So if you can take a couple of seconds to rate your overall satisfaction with today's webinar, that would be really great. It helps us improve our offer. So many thanks in advance. And yes, I think we are done for today. As I said at the beginning, I will send after the session the recording link and the written Q&A report. So we will need a few days to prepare this report, but stay tuned and you'll get the email shortly. And yes, I think, Valerie, if any questions, attendees can still get in touch with you or with their local SGS representative. And yes, as you explained, we have a wide network of laboratories which have the capabilities to test the fabric mass. I don't know if you have an idea of how many labs we have with this capability, but definitely we have labs that can help you wherever you are.
Yes,
right.
We have some capability in the United States, in China, in Europe. So it also depends on which test you need to make, but breathability is ISO 9237 is almost in all the softline lab. Filtration depends on the method, but most of the time we have some capability. So in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and anyway, the local SGS representatives can make the link between the executive affiliates, which will make the test, and the client wherever he is. No problem for that.
Right, correct. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Thanks for your time. We hope that you found this presentation useful. And if you want to stay up to date with all standard changes, latest developments, or if you are interested in our upcoming webinars, I just would like to remind you that we have a LinkedIn showcase page, so feel free to follow us, and also some newsletters you may be interested in. So I'll share with you all the links in the wrap-up emailing. So thanks again for joining us today, and I wish you a nice day or a nice evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.